the lady.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Lady Liberty League. Today is July 20th. Thank you for joining us as we begin this super important conversation. And give me 1 second to get to my intro notes here. So this segment is titled White Coats Removed and a Movement Awakened. And we are inviting today two of our favorite Northeast Ohio pediatricians, Dr. Valerie Fouts-Fowler and Dr. Lauren Beene. And I want to briefly introduce them and then hand over the stage to them. Also, just a few matters of brief reminders of rules and housekeeping. As they speak and you form questions in your mind, please go ahead and throw them in the chat, and our moderator, Tom, will be happy to ask your questions on your behalf. So I would first like to introduce Dr. Valerie Fouts-Fowler. She is from Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital. She's a Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital alumni. I'm sorry, I'm gonna mute. If you guys are not on mute, just mute yourselves so it does not interrupt the call. She joined Comprehensive Pediatrics in 2012 and has since become one of University Hospital's highest rated pediatricians based on patient satisfaction. Named to Cleveland Magazine's Best Doctors list in both 2024 and 2025. She is widely respected for her exceptional clinical care, her dedication to marginalized patients and families, and her expertise in complex pediatric cases. She completed additional training through the Reach Institute in patient-centered mental health for pediatricians. Dr. Fouts-Fowler is also a co-leader in the unionization, sorry, that was a mouthful, movement at UH, and shares a deeply held belief in every patient's right to compassionate, quality health care and a physician who listens and advocates. We are also happy to have who has become one of my friends, Dr. Lauren Beene, and she is a nationally recognized physician leader who serves on the Ohio State Medical Association board and the education board of the Committee to Protect Healthcare. She is the founder of Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, the driving force behind the successful 2023 ballot initiative that enshrined reproductive freedom into our Ohio law. A graduate of Case Western Reserve University School of Medicine and chief resident at Rainbow Babies and Children's Hospital, Dr. Beene is currently leading the union efforts at University Hospitals Cleveland through Concerned UH Physicians in partnership with Doctors Council SEIU. She is committed to dismantling barriers to high quality healthcare and strengthening the physician's voice in an increasingly corporate system. So, thank you both for being on our call today. And I will pass it over to Dr. Val if you would like to begin with a little bit of background, and then feel free to turn it over to Dr. Lauren.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. I think you kind of summed up my background pretty well. I've been at Comprehensive Pediatrics for since 2012, and there I've found my work family, so to speak. Fabulous doctors, nurses, staff that always are going above and beyond, and a patient population that I've really been blessed to care for. Probably about 3,000 patients, and have formed huge, close relationships with all of them. I went into pediatrics because children, they're just honest and curious. They show up exactly as they are, without any preconceived ideas or expectations. And that honesty and excitement for life brings a kind of magic into the room for me. And I love guiding parents in caring for their children as well. I enjoy, obviously, medicine, the physiology, science behind it, but especially the art of being a pediatrician. It's also about advocacy. It's about teaching, celebrating victories, big and small. I don't just treat children, I get to know them. I cheer for their wins, I ache for their losses and their struggles, and I continue to think about them long after the day has ended, and especially over the past 4 weeks, constantly thinking about them.
Thank you for that. It's clearly deeply emotional because that bond is strong.
Very much so.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Lauren Beene. I am also a general pediatrician. Val and I have pretty much the same job, either side of town. I'm on the east side in Shaker and in Solon. I have been at my current practice since 2019, still calling it my current practice despite recent circumstances. Like Val, I absolutely love what I do. I know it's a privilege to be somebody's trusted doctor, especially when it comes to caring for people's children. I think that for me, what drew me into pediatrics, just like Val, is like, the honesty of children and their resilience. And also the need to kind of make a relationship with the whole family. When you are a child's pediatrician, you figure out ways to communicate with the kid that might not know how to talk, but you communicate with the child and help figure out what the problem is, if there is a problem, and bring a voice to that problem, and then find a way to communicate that with their family to explain, this is what my understanding of what's going on, and this is, what I think might help make things better. And, just that whole process of communicating on so many different levels, in moments that are, very special to me, I find to be a real privilege. I've become pretty involved in advocacy on a bigger scale over the last couple of years, because I started to see how the external world was negatively impacting my patients and their families, to a degree that I couldn't tolerate anymore. First, it was with the Dobbs decision and my patients not having access to necessary reproductive health care. And I saw that that was going to be devastating for my patients, especially my patients that come from lower income areas of town and don't have the resources that I have other patients who do have resources, that, it just, this disparities there of access to care, when there are clear barriers, that those disparities become vast. But in our work on the issue one, which I know a lot of you guys were involved in, I greatly appreciate that. I learned just how powerful my voice is. Before getting involved in that, I didn't realize that I could influence the community the way that I was able to, because I worked with so many amazing people. But that was really empowering. And I also realized that, in medicine, everything has become so corporate that the people who you would think that you would go to ask for help, who are either running institutions, running our medical societies, they're not as able to help the people on the front line as I thought that they would be. And the people on the front line really have to take it into their own hands to fix problems when they see it. And that's what we did with issue one, by amending the Constitution. And that's what we're doing at university hospitals by forming a union. Is we are bringing power to the voice of the, in our case, the physicians on the front line. However, I really want all of the frontline workers to unionize at UH. But we're bringing power to that voice so that we can be heard, because we must be heard by those who currently have a disproportionate amount of power. And that's how we got here. Speaking truth to power, but that's how it goes. And we're just really at the beginning of this. I'm very excited to see what kind of change we can bring, to our system, to our community, and maybe even nationally, with what we found ourselves in the middle of.
I love Oh, sorry, Tom. I love
Sorry.
how you brought up the other workers on the front line because, as you know, I'm a nurse and I am a fierce advocate for the nurses, the STNAs, the caregivers, everybody in the healthcare industry, and how oppressive the corporate structure can be on us, not just in, taking a voice away from providers, but in creating unsafe work environments and burnout and being overwhelmed and under-resourced. So that is huge, and I'm behind you with that 100%.
I was gonna say myself, I hear both Lauren and Val say how much they care about their patients, how deeply important it is they're receiving the care that they need. And I feel I would love to know more about what drives your desire to organize to help enforce and provide that patient bill of rights, right? They're trying to get the care. You need this authority to give them the care that you want to provide them. What do you hope to gain by organizing and then being able to give them what they need to have their best outcomes?
I would say, we're watching our system crumble in real time, our healthcare system. I think initially our concern at university hospitals was watching so many specialists leave. Sometimes entire departments, and wait times were becoming unreasonable, several months for certain specialties. Some specialties even were out over a year. And that's just not good healthcare. And people, the doctors have been bringing up concerns, and you're right that this isn't just about doctors. It's about techs and aides, janitors, nurses, every person who needs to hold up the system while they're being undervalued by it. But I think there needs to be communication. And one thing we kept finding as doctors would talk to us and tell us their problems is that these systemic issues are, pretty problematic. And most of these doctors said, I've been talking to administration, and we're not getting anywhere. And that is kind of what pushed us to say, well, we need a voice, and being in a union will allow us to do that, because every person deserves to be able to go into the doctor's office, be able to go into a hospital and be treated with somebody who's caring and listening to them and looking out for their best interest. And if those people can't, because they're not allowed to speak up, then that kind of destroys the entire process. That's kind of why I went into all that.
Yeah, same. Exactly. Val and I are very much on the same page here, and which makes sense, I guess. But yeah, it just, we like Val said, we've seen our patients not be able to get the care that we know that they should be able to get, that we once saw them get not that long ago. And due to the way that our system is structured, that care has become inaccessible. And as a result, people suffer. And what's the point if you can't actually get your patients the care that you know that they need, right? There's just, it just doesn't make any sense. I think part of like the responsibility of any healthcare worker is to make sure your patient gets the care that they need, and if there's a barrier, you find your way around the barrier. But we're in a situation where our barrier is our administrative culture at our hospital system that has basically silenced the front line systematically, and that's reflective of a national problem. And so again, I don't mean to speak for both of us, but I think we're on the same page that like this wasn't really an option for us. We had to do something because it is only going to get worse. And I think that that's why we're surely not going to give up this fight, because Val and I are extremely committed to our patients and making sure that they can get unobstructed access to the care that they need and that families aren't suffering. And we're going to keep fighting until we can ensure that our patients can get that care. And the first step in that process is us being able to use our voice in a way that is effective and powerful. And the nice thing about a union is unions are one of the most powerful ways that you can combat excessive corporate power. It's not perfect because that corporate power has taken away a number of the protections that unions, could provide. But it's that collective power that we are building, and we are seeing get stronger even after our being illegally terminated. And we're just gonna keep pushing it forward.
Before getting on this call, myself and my two co-founders, we had a conversation, and Laura, you could probably speak to this. Laura had a question, to Tom and myself. Are you and Dr. Lauren and Dr. Val looking to create feeding into a larger movement? And, we began the conversation of there are unions that protect nurses. There are unions like SEIU does a fantastic job with healthcare workers globally. And you guys are now partnering with SEIU to form the union for providers in Northeast Ohio. But, I think you and I have talked, Lauren, that I spent a career helping elders age in place, and you've spent a career, and Dr. Val has spent a career helping children to thrive. And although we serve on opposite ends of that life spectrum, we're fighting against that same corporate system that puts profits above patients. And so, in that, I want to maybe incorporate Laura, if she can clean up my question a little bit. Do you see this as becoming or strengthening part of a larger movement nationwide?
Did you want Laura to ask, or you just want us to answer? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
you
Oh,
could answer, but I wouldn't
yeah.
mind if Laura builds on that a little because she had some thoughts around it
Yeah.
before we jumped
And
in the call.
and doctors, I feel like I'm always trying, most of us are probably always trying to connect all these dots of what we're hearing about in our local communities, what we're hearing about in the state of Ohio in our case, and of course nationally. And so, we have the privilege to hear from the two of you today, and you're sort of, you're obviously, you have your own careers to consider, you have your patients to consider, you have this institution that you were committed to that, right now has at least let you down. But I'm thinking about these bigger issues too. I mean, to begin with, I mean, the financials on all the institutions in at least Northeast Ohio, have the only one that has made any money in the last year was the Cleveland Clinic. And even at that, it was a very small profit. And so that isn't necessarily working. Now we have, from a national perspective, the major cuts that are going to be affecting, Medicaid. We're hearing that there are at least 11 rural hospitals in Ohio, one in Northeast Ohio, that are probably going to close. And then I guess just one other thing that I feel is like this big story nationally is that we don't have enough physicians. And then look at what's happening with the two of you. So I'm not sure in all of that, Sue, what my exact question is, but I know I have all these thoughts floating around in my head that are all these big headlines that we're all probably reading about. And, I guess the question is, with all of that going on, how do you think about it, if, even just bringing it down to your own individual level, or at least, kind of, thinking about it maybe a little bit more broadly for your patients and and UH, the institution you've been working for.
Yeah, I'll maybe jump in there because I think about this all the time. I'm sure Val does too. But I see what we're doing as very much part of a national movement that is kind of in its infancy. Um, the so just taking it, a lot of steps back. Right now, there is a discrepancy in power across pretty much every sector, including our just entire society, where the people at the top have an unchecked power, and the people who are like us on the bottom, but the very important bottom, have no power really in comparison on our own as individuals. But the more that we organize, the more that we come together as communities, whether it's through labor unions or community associations or, whatever it is, the more that we connect and strengthen our relationships and our commitment to each other as people that we recognize as being valuable individuals in our community, the more that we can generate power that can counterbalance the extreme power at the top. And I think that in healthcare, at the moment, that extreme power at the top is held by insurance companies, drug companies, and a little bit by hospital executives. However, not to the same extent. They're kind of beholden to the powers at the very top. But there's currently nobody who can combat the unchecked powers of insurance companies and drug companies. And what I hope will happen is that by organizing and by physicians organizing, nurses organizing, all of us organizing, and then finding ways to bring that power together, to focus all of our organizing efforts that are happening around the country at the same time, we can create something that is so powerful that we might actually be able to take on the unchecked power of health insurance and drug companies. And I'm actually working on another project alongside this where we are working to bring together physician organizing groups. We'll probably end up expanding it to all healthcare workers for that purpose. So absolutely, this is part of a national movement. And I think too that we're in a very strange point in history as far as like the economics of healthcare go. One, everything is about to collapse, as we know, but also the insurance companies have made it impossible for, at least in the physician world, have made it impossible for physicians to work as independent solo practice, private practice anymore. Over the past 10 years, 10 years ago, 75% of physicians were self-employed. And then they were just like, seeing their patients in the hospital who were, as needed, but they employed themselves. 10 years went by and the percentage went from 75% being self-employed to being 25% are self-employed, which is a dramatic shift. And when that happened because of the exorbitant power of insurance companies, as well as COVID. And now we have this body of workers that are the physicians that have suddenly found themselves employed without any plan for how to maintain the voice of that group of people in their role of protecting their patients and protecting the system itself. And so I think that, one of the big things that Val and I and everybody who's been leading our group always likes to emphasize is that, one of the big reasons that we're doing this is we want to save our hospital system from itself. Right now, the hospital system is falling off of a cliff. They all are. And we see problems on the ground. We all do. Everybody sees problems on the ground that are problems that are making the hospital lose money. Charges not being sent to the insurance companies for high resolution imaging studies that just the insurance companies end up getting to keep all of this money because the hospitals don't get that money, not paying, not just a lot of paying rent on things that are uninhabited, expanding in places that don't make sense. Not the people who are leading healthcare in general in this country are doing so in a way that is not including the people who are actually doing the work and are seeing where things are going wrong, and they're not listening to those people. And so as a union, one of our goals is to really be able to have an influence on how the system is run. And so when we see things that are going wrong, and where not only, of course, the number one issue being patient care and patient safety, but also like, hey, you're losing millions of dollars right now on X, Y, or Z. We see it. Will you please listen to me? They'll have to listen to us because we'll have the power that they have to listen to us. So we really want to do everything we can to help our hospital system thrive, because if our hospital system doesn't thrive, our patients will suffer.
And I think when you take it also from kind of the patient perspective, patients are suffering and they don't even necessarily know why. They don't know that why their wait times are 8 hours because the ER is understaffed. They don't know that two other patients were scheduled at the exact same time that they're at. They're probably wondering, why have four of my specialists left? Who am I supposed to see? And those are all things that we are trying to offer solutions to, and we can't get heard. People would say, oh, okay, and then nothing changes. So, if you want doctors and healthcare workers to be focused and rested and able to take care of you, um, then you need them to be able to make decisions. And unionization isn't just about politics. It actually isn't about politics at all. It's about safety, and it's about care, and allowing doctors who actually practice medicine to have a say in how the patients are cared for.
Thank you both for saying all of that, because it's so important for people who are not in the industry to understand how safety is compromised, not just for the patient, but for the provider and the healthcare workers when we have a system that is driven by corporate greed. And it seems to me that in your provider lives, you were extremely busy, and now you've been unlawfully released from your duties by UH. And switching gears a little bit, I want to say, even in the absence of your provider roles actively right now, you are just as busy, if not even more busy, because you are building and structuring and organizing and trying to strengthen this movement, which is already strong, but making it stronger. um, I know that as pediatricians, you have built a deeply emotional, lifelong bond with your patients, and to be just all of a sudden abruptly cut off from that. Um, and I know that I'm going to touch on a nerve, and I don't mean to provoke emotion, but I kind of need to provoke emotion so people can fully understand this isn't just about creating safety in the workspace and better treatment of providers and giving back your voice. It's about giving you back your jobs. Like, you have patients and families who have depended on you, who have built those bonds with you. How has this journey reshaped your identity as doctors and as leaders and as advocates for these patients and families?
I would say, to begin with as far as like being fired, um, really devastating is the only word that I can use to describe that. I mean, it's incredibly sad and hard, to not be able to help my patients and their families. And I think about them all the time. And they've been great. They've sent me cards, messages, Facebook requests, all sorts of things. They've been hugely helpful. I mean, this is my passion, and to have it yanked away, not because of wrongdoing, but because I care and stood up for what is right, is heartbreaking. I mean, I think the fact that UH thinks they can put in just a temporary doctor and everything will be fine is completely wrong. I mean, we have built relationships with these patients. I have this one patient. I remember him. I started seeing him when he was 4, and he's 14 now. And initially, sorry, this is a little bit of a tangent, but initially, he came in and he had such severe anxiety that he wouldn't speak. He would scream the entire visit. He would vomit. He was just so upset every time he would leave the house. And I worked with that family, and we got his anxiety under control. And a couple months later, he said to me, "Hi, doctor." And I cried. I mean, I tried not to, but I did, because I'm like, this is it. This is why we're doing this. This is what we want to do. And there's no way somebody can walk into that room with that patient and be able to do anything comparatively until, they formed a relationship. So I'm furious. I'm furious for my patients. I'm furious that anybody thinks that these are relationships that can so easily be replaced. And I think that, through this whole process, I've learned the power of my voice. I mean, that hugely is how much impact we can have when we all stand together. I think most people who go into healthcare obviously want to help people. But I found that I am a leader. I'm an advocate. And I don't lead for a title, I lead because I have to, because it's the courageous sort of thing to do. And I fight not just for my patients, but for every healthcare worker. And so I think I agree with Lauren. This is the beginning. We're going to win. We're going to get our jobs back. We're going to unionize UH, and then we're going to spread it everywhere. That's my hope.
Amen.
Yeah, Val, I did not find your story very tangential. I found it very on point. I was immediate. I don't know if anyone knows. I love the movie Patch Adams. It immediately made me think of a key component of that is that you're treating a person first. And that is a huge component of what this relationship is like with your doctor and patient situation. So I appreciate you really sharing that and really emphasizing why it's so important. You can't have a temp worker. You can't just go to any doctor and expect the same experience. I know I've been seeing my own doctor for 20 years now. It's just they know me and I know them, and I know I can say these things. I never had a breakthrough like your patient where I said, "Hi, doctor," but there's a point where I'm able to go there and just talk about, yeah, I've been working on these things year over year to make sure, because we have this rapport relationship, and he's able to come back, check his notes, and be like, yeah, okay, great. We're seeing real life progress. So I love that we're emphasizing this. I think the patients also understand that relationship that's with their doctor or with their practitioner. A comment came in, and I think this ties in to the dysfunction that they're also seeing as patients in the system overall, the frustrations they're having with insurance, the hospital system, all of that. Diane chimes in that people are turning in a way to take control of the dysfunction that they're seeing. They're turning to more natural paths of medicine. They're seeing their chiropractors, they're seeing dietitians, they're seeing other forms of treatment as a way of taking back control of what they can do. Are there other things patients can do to help support a stronger relationship with the hospital? Be like, hey, hospital, I am not receiving the care I need, so I am looking elsewhere, but I don't want to look elsewhere. I'd like to continue coming here. What else can patients do to help advocate for this cause, to understand that it's working for both of you?
I think I will say that I think Val and I feel that too, because we're both patients also. We're also patients that are frustrated in this system, parents of kids who are patients in this system that's not working. And yeah, so I think like Val and I are finding our voice and realizing that our voice is powerful. The voice that's really powerful is the voice of the patients. That's what UH is going to listen to. Obviously, they don't care that much about Val and me. They threw us to the curb. We're doing our best to yell as loudly as we can, but you guys are what keeps them in business, frankly, which I know I don't like to think about medicine as a business, which is, but unfortunately the people who are running it do. And, I think telling them, writing letters to the editor, writing letters to the board, finding out, if you know somebody who is influential in the system, if you know people who donate large sums of money, which again, it shouldn't be about money, but these are the voices that the hospital system listens to, sadly. The more that you come together and use your voice through activities like this, whether you're an individual or a group, the more that happens, the more that we'll get closer to where we need to be, which is toward a dramatic shift in power. And so I think, honestly, that's just, keep doing what you're doing and ask your friends to do what you're doing. And, don't be silenced, because your voice is the most important voice for sure.
And tying that in, I think it's important. Val mentioned earlier in the call that she has approximately 3,000 patients. However, she was able to draw from those 3,000 patients a specific example of a patient who meant a lot to her from the ages of 4 to 14, and being able to help facilitate that progress through those barriers of anxiety that young child was was facing, and getting those stories out there is vastly important because UH may have discarded both of you. But understanding that as a corporation, considering their bottom line is the priority and the sustainability of the structure they've created, whether the dollars are allocated appropriately or not. And I heard what you touched on. Um, the bottom line is important, and when you impact that ability for that provider to continue that continuity of care with that patient and that patient's family who you created a bond with, you are then going to disenfranchise patients, and they're going to go to another, like Diane in the comment section, to homeopathic or another hospital system or a different avenue that will certainly interrupt that bottom line for UH.
I think I agree 100%. And I think that the continuity of care is one area that UH is greatly underestimating the importance of. I mean, it's incredibly important, kind of like earlier somebody was saying that, as adults, we get to know our physicians, and we need our doctors. I know my patients' fears and quirks and their history, with usually not needing too much backup information from the chart. But I know what I need to do to help them be the best they are. And they are going to have to turn somewhere else, because they're not going to be able to, and that's true for Lauren's patients, they're not going to be able to get the care that they deserve. And ultimately, that's what it comes down to, is patients deserve better. And we all need to work together to make that happen.
And the outpouring of comments and letters and public support from your patients and your patients' families definitely reflects that, and the fact that they don't want to start that relationship over again with a substitute or fill-in provider. They want that provider that they've grown that relationship with and that trust and that bond with, the provider who knows their family dynamics, and I think, like you said, their quirks and their idiosyncrasies and what works for that patient versus another patient, and to build again from scratch. It's so disruptive to that ability to get that patient where they need to be and where they could be to thriving.
Yeah, and one thought I have related to that too is we've had a number of these postcard writing events, which have been wonderful, where supporters, patient families, other colleagues, people from the community have come out and written postcards that we've sent to the UH Board of Directors, and we sent over 600 postcards in, like, I don't know, less than 2 weeks. It was really incredible, and a lot of them had kids' handwriting and kids' art. And it was really incredibly moving. And we sent 600 postcards to the 30 or so people who are on the UH Board of Directors. And I went to the one, so we've had them on the east side and on the west side. And I have no patients on the west side. So I was able to go to the west side one, where it was all Val's patients, and just kind of like mingle with her patients. And a lot of people didn't know who I was, and which was great. And I was able to just talk with them. And this one mom told me that her child, who has cerebral palsy, and Val has been their doctor for, over a decade. And they have lost 5 of their specialists in the last 2 years because of this dysfunction that is driving doctors out of the system and out of the area. And Val has been their one stable source of continuity. And then when Val was abruptly terminated, that was absolutely devastating for them. And Val was actually the only reason that they were staying in the area. And when I mentioned to this mom that Val was replaced by a temporary locums physician, where they are just like, they're kind of like travel nurses, or people who fill in the gaps where there's need. And there's nothing wrong specifically with locums people. It's just, it's a different thing, you can't replace Val with a locums person. or any physician that has longstanding relationships. And when I mentioned this to this mom, the mom, her face went white and she said to me, that makes me feel like UH doesn't see my child as a person. And that's when I started crying. And it's not that, like, I don't want to throw UH under the bus. But what I do want to do is I want to motivate everybody to show UH we are all people. Every single one of us is a person. Every one of our family members is a person. We all have equal influence and significance in our community. And when we speak up, when we all speak up, that is power. And, I just don't think that, so Val and me, yes, we are two pediatricians that lost our jobs, but what happened to us is reflective of such a bigger problem. And I think that, there's all of this outrage because people have been struggling with the issues that Val and I are trying to organize against for so long. And everybody is just fed up with a system that is about to get a lot worse. And so, I think that this is the time that we all say, hey, look, healthcare system, whatever it is, if it's UH or wherever, if you feel like you are not getting the care that you need, if your family members are not getting the respect that they need, we need to speak up. We need to let the system know in whatever way we can that this is unacceptable and we as a community won't take it.
I love that you bring up some of those valid points because I know outside of this call, when we have spoke, and Dr. Val also has expressed her feelings around it. You have both been very clear that this is not your dissatisfaction with UH. It is not that you don't want your jobs back. You very much so want your jobs back, but you are not going to back down from your First Amendment right of association and to organize and to demand what you need to be safe and successful. So both conversations are true. You liked your experience at UH. You want to stay with UH. You want your jobs back, but you also want to have your First Amendment rights honored, that you have the right to associate and to organize without union busting, without captive audience meetings, without those unfair separations from your positions.
I think I've had many people say to me, do you want to go back after how they treated you? And yes, I mean, it sounds crazy, but I truly believe UH can be this wonderful institution. We just have to get back to what ultimately really matters and why they were there to begin with, which is taking care of the patients. And it's not just our university, I mean, this is problems throughout everywhere throughout the country. And I think that, yes, I still want to work there. I just want to make it better.
Me too.
I'm glad you mentioned some of the challenges that you're facing and brought up how important it is for the continuity of care, for your patients, for doctors, for everyone in the system. I wondered, while this continuity of care is temporarily disrupted as we find the path back to your patients and have this difficult conversation with UH to do you right and make it better for everyone. I'm curious to know what your continued efforts are, either organizing with UH or when you mention this larger scale issue, what are the efforts you're continuing to do? I know you mentioned a couple things: postcard writing, advocating, showing up to places like these to continue to tell your story. What else is going on for the two of you?
So I think that there's a lot of ways that we could answer this question. I think the first thing I want to mention is that we are just going to get bigger and bigger and louder and more connected with each other. We are using this to start a movement, just like we did with Ohio Physicians for Reproductive Rights, where we just kept building and building and building until we had the whole state working together in a grassroots army to defend our rights. We plan to do the same thing here to defend our patients' ability to be able to get care in an environment where their healthcare providers are not punished for speaking up. And so things that we have planned coming up, we are having another picket. The Our next picket is going to be on July 30th. That's a Wednesday from 5:30 p.m. until 7 p.m. in front of the UH main campus building on the sidewalk at 11 or 11100 Euclid Avenue. We have a flyer going around and a map that I'm sure Sue can send out to you guys. We'll make sure she has it. And we're going to try to make that one even bigger than the last one, which at one point there were well over 320 some people there marching in the line and helicopters over top, video camera there. I mean, it was just incredible. So we wanted to do that again, but we want to do it right in front of the hospital. We are getting a lot of very powerful entities are writing in support of us. So we've already had letters submitted by the Democratic Senate and House caucuses to Cliff McGarrian. We have had the Ohio Nurses Association wrote a really scathing letter that was, if you haven't read it, holy moly, I love nurses because they just don't hold back. It's wonderful. And they're so good at organizing. We have a lot to learn from nurses. And then just yesterday, or the day before yesterday, we got letters from a letter that was signed by every single person on the Cleveland City Council, as well as a letter signed by Brian Pearson of the North Shore AFL-CIO, which represents 150 unions in the Northern Ohio area. That's about 80,000 individual members. So, and we know there are more coming. So we are just going to keep sending these powerful letters. We're going to keep using our connections to amplify this and not let it up until one, Val and I get our jobs back, which we feel, although again, our priority is strengthening the voice of physicians, protecting that voice, protecting the voice of healthcare providers so that our patients can get care. We've realized that if we don't get our jobs back, then that will allow the corporate system to make an example of us. And we can't let them do that because this has caused our colleagues to be very afraid. And we need to show them that the bullies cannot win. You know, we are going to win, and we will continue to win, but on a much larger scale. So we're trying to get our jobs back for that reason. And then we're going to just keep organizing and going and going and going. And, you know, when we love suggestions. So if you have ideas, the ways that you think that we could further amplify what we're doing or further build our power, you know, please let us know, because this is a community undertaking. Because again, this is not just about Val and me. We happen to be the little pebbles at the beginning of this avalanche, just like a few of us were at the beginning of the OPRR avalanche. And we're gonna roll with it.
So could I just add to that, because that was all fantastic. And I love that you mentioned Brian Pearson from AFL-CIO, which is actually the umbrella union that my husband and my son belong to. And he's doing fantastic things right now with AFL. But I also want to give a shout out to SEIU 1199 and the Doctors Council, who is helping with all of this organizing. And they also house the Nurse Alliance, and they provide protection for STNAs and caregivers as well. So I don't want to leave this call without mentioning SEIU. They've been fantastic. And I know personally, Jeff Derringer has been terrific on my end. And I think we just lost Dr. Lauren.
Sorry, I'm back. I accidentally pressed a push alert.
It's okay. No problem. But I wanted to add that to your list. Definitely our legislators in Columbus and other, but SEIU has been pivotal in this, and the Doctors Council.
Val, do you have anything to add to this for what is your continued efforts, or what thoughts on how else we can advocate as groups? I think we're in the right space. We are people that are interested in advancing the community in general. So all of the things that we can do, we're here to support one another. I think that's what's best for all of us.
I agree completely. And this is, you know, Lauren's kind of has some experience in organizing. This has all been a bit new to me, but so amazing. I mean, the support and the groups that are already well established and have already fought so many battles before us, have been lending incredible strength and ideas. I mean, really, it's blown my mind how much work has been done. You know, I feel like, wow, there's this whole area that I knew nothing about. So I guess maybe that was a plus of getting fired. But you know, I do think SEIU, you know, has a track record for fighting for healthcare rights and dignity, and so I am honored to be, you know, working with so many of these people. I do know one fun event that we have coming up is August 10th. We're going to speak with Dropkick Murphys group, which has solidified in my kid's mind that I might be a little bit cool. But so, you know, excited for that. But 100% with Lauren too. Any ideas that people have, I am happy to you know, charge ahead into whatever good trouble, so to speak, I can create. So, but thank you.
And
I
one
love
thing,
that. Go ahead.
and also we're still collecting signatures on our petition. So right now we have like 6,500 and some signatures on our petition that you can sign by going to concernedUHphysicians.org, concernedUHphysicians, plural.org. And if you guys can help us get to 10,000, that is our goal. We are, you know, just sharing it with everybody. It doesn't matter how old you are or where you live or what you do for a living. If that doesn't matter. We want everybody to sign because again, this is everybody's issue of silencing healthcare workers. And I want to mention as Dropkick Murphys and Bad Religion's very cool. So.
I was trying to find that link in the chat. Can you send that to me and I will make sure it's in our next newsletter as well so we can help push that out and get the signatures needed for everyone. I also think Dropkick Murphys is very cool. I love the collaboration here. I think it draws in audiences that might not be aware of what is needed for this type of advocacy and work to get the job done. Thanks, Lauren, for putting it in there. We're about at time. Do you have any advice for all of us as we, I don't know, take this to our networks to continue advocating for how important this is for everyone and the repercussions for all of us?
I think telling patients stories is incredibly powerful. Maybe asking patients, you know, what they're experiencing, because ultimately it comes back to them. But I just think the more people are aware of these problems, and if they're not aware, they're unfortunately going to become aware as they, you know, over the next couple of years as healthcare dangerously gets to this cliff where I'm worried we're going to have massive problems. So I think just, you know, send people to our website, concernedUHphysicians.org. And I'm happy to talk to anybody anywhere. And then just, I think if everybody started saying, hey, is my physician unionized? Is my physician part of a union everywhere? Would have an impact.
Yeah, and ask your physicians too. Because I think, you know, the physicians live in this bubble that is really thick. And I think a lot of doctors just like have no idea that they can even unionize. And I think that, you know, the more that the community, you know, encourages that and says, hey, have you heard about this, you know, doctors union? You know, what do you think about that? It might, you know, that might actually be very helpful because, you know, we learn a lot from our patients and we learn, you know, I mean, really, we learn the most from our patients. And so whatever our patients say in the short time that we are with them, you know, sticks. And so, you know, just take advantage of those moments. And then I think just in general, like Val and I have both said this, and I know you guys can probably all relate, but own your voice. We are each very powerful individuals, and we can make huge waves, especially when you're friends with people like Sue. Sue, I mean, it's people that are really making positive differences in the world. And so, just keep bringing people into the fold. Your friends will listen to you, your family members will listen to you, and that's how we continue to build our community strength.
Thank you so much for those parting words. I'm really grateful for your time here today. Um, I will be publishing this. We'll be sharing with our friends, taking everything to heart. I thank you for all of the work that you're doing, and I hope that we can also help amplify this to our network.
Thank you. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both very much.
Sue, do you want to let us know next week's guest and close it out?
Sure thing. Thanks. And thank you both. You already know where my heart is, and you already know that the universe has drawn both of you, Dr. Lauren and Dr. Val, into my vortex because we have a great deal of work to do together, and I'm behind you every step of the way. So thank you for being here today and sharing your experience. Next week, we are having a special meeting on Sunday, July 27th, and I really want to encourage everybody, whether you're return visitors or new visitors, and even to both of you providers here on the call, to join because we are having a very informative special meeting with Rachel Coyle, who is an expert on how things work in the State House. I mean, I have a binder full of terminology that I'm still studying through as it relates to my city council work and understanding and navigating what's going on in the federal government and certainly the state government involved in that. But Rachel has this fantastic presentation how she breaks it all down and explains it. And it certainly will feed into creating better, stronger laws when it comes to protections in unions and organizing if the vast majority of people begin to understand or scratch the surface of understanding of how things work and how thoughts and ideas and needs become legislation in our state. So please join us on Sunday, the 27th at 1 p.m. via Zoom. Thank you, everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.